Hello and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, I'll be showing you how to manage your PostgreSQL triggers. So this will include things like modifying a trigger, disabling, and also removing a trigger. So let's start by taking a look at how we can modify a trigger. To modify a trigger, you have to use the following syntax, and it begins with the alter trigger statement. So you use the alter trigger statement to modify a trigger. This statement is a PostgreSQL extension of the standard SQL language. So basically, the syntax begins with the alter trigger statement, where you specify the name of the trigger associated with a particular table that you want to change. Second, you put the new trigger name in the rename clause. You can see there's a rename clause. So you put the name you want to change the trigger to. So I've got a simple query here. So for example, if we wanted to change the last name changes trigger, okay, we have a trigger called last name changes. If we wanted to change the name of that trigger, which is associated to this employees table and also to the log last name changes. So if we wanted to change that, we have to use this alter trigger statement. All right. So if we wanted to change it, this is the syntax we will use to change the name of that trigger. So this statement basically is saying change the name of this trigger, which is a trigger set on this employees table, change it to this name, log underscore last name changes. So let's take a look at how to disable a trigger. PostgreSQL does not provide any specific statement such as disable trigger for disabling an existing trigger. However, you can still disable a trigger by using the alter table statement. So let's take a look at the syntax. So this is the syntax if you want to disable a trigger. So you basically specify the name of the trigger after the disable trigger clause to disable a particular trigger. To disable all triggers associated with a table, you use the all. Okay, so if I wanted to remove all the triggers linked to a particular table, I will use this all switch as well. Instead of a particular, rather than use a trigger name, I will use this all switch, and that will get rid of all the triggers linked to a particular table. The key thing you need to know here is that the disabled trigger is still available in the database, even though you're just disabling it, you're not removing it. So it's still present, but it will not get activated when a trigger event occurs. So this is again another sample query here to disable a trigger. Say for example, I want to disable a trigger. I'll use the alter table, which is the table that contains the trigger. In this case is the employees table. And I'll use the disable trigger clause and then type in the name of the trigger I want to disable. So this will disable a specific trigger. If I wanted to disable all triggers for a table, I'll just use the all switch rather than the specific name of the trigger. Let's see how we can remove a trigger. To remove an existing trigger definition, you have to use the drop trigger statement. So let's take a look at the statement. So this is a typical statement you would use to drop an existing trigger. So you specify the name of the trigger that you want to remove after the drop trigger clause, and then the table that the trigger is associated with. To avoid errors of removing non-existent trigger, it's best to use the if exist option, which is this if exist, and that way you avoid the error message coming up in case you're trying to remove a trigger that does not exist. So by using this if exist option, it checks first to see if there is such a trigger, then it goes ahead to remove it. So this is an example on line 8 here of how you would remove a trigger. Say for example, if I wanted to remove a trigger called log_last_name_changes on this table called employees, this is the statement I would use to remove the trigger. So that's it. In this lecture, I've shown you how to modify, to disable, and remove an existing trigger. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.